answer to. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you'll look sweet.
Hello, Cubanwriter here. Today I am recording in Jesse James Comics, which is in Glendale, Arizona, and I'm here with my friend Cosmo, who is a big fan of the show we'll be covering today, Legion. Say hi, Cosmo.
Hello.
Okay, now, before we begin, I suppose we should talk a little bit about what Legion is. I want you to imagine a show about an insane schizophrenic living at a mental facility and being treated there for his condition. And, oh, by the way, he's the son of Professor X and he's a super powerful mutant and doesn't know it. That's the synopsis of the show.
And then the rest of it's basically inside of his head.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that at any other point in history a show like this could have been made, which is so psychedelic and metaphorical and mostly takes place in someone's psychosis.
It's really crazy, actually. And so the creator of this show, Noah Hawley, he basically is obsessed with Stanley Kubrick. So you'll see a Clockwork Orange reference quite often. You see basically The Shining. You get sounds like The Shining. You get 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's nonstop. He's obsessed with Stanley Kubrick, and it shows. And so for this to be a Marvel-based show and have this element, I've never seen anything like it.
You know, I had no idea about the Stanley Kubrick connection, but now that you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that shot seems inspired by Kubrick. That one. He was recently, in the finale episode, there was a character in a white tube repairing things, and I thought, that looks a little bit like 2001 to me. And now I know it was!
Yes, I have a little bit of useless information that we can put to use. There are things of that nature, so...
Well, what did you think about the very first episode? First of all, did you know it was a superhero show when you started?
When I very first started, I only knew it was a little bit because I knew of the mutant David Haller factor a little bit, but I didn't know very much about it, and I didn't really remember that he was the son of Professor X.
You know, I think a person could start watching this and have no idea about the connection until the last 60 seconds or 2 minutes of the first episode.
And I thought that was cool because it's basically still making some form of X-Men universe, but they're doing a connection to like the starting out of we're worried about mutants being dangerous. So they're doing their own version of a start of an X-Men type universe. If you agree.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the way that they arrange their sets and their costumes and the technology, it's hard to put a finger on when this is happening, and I think that's on purpose. Half of it looks like it's in the 60s or 70s, and then they'll throw in stuff that looks modern day. And there's really no way you could put a finger on the time period, which is good, because then it can fill any point in the X-Men backstory. And any technology oddities can be due to the fact that technology is different in the X-Men comics, much more advanced than ours, but still with that retro look. I mean, if you look at an X-Men comic from the 70s, they have technology in there that, you know, we could only dream of today. But also it looks old-fashioned.
Yes, completely. I thought that was interesting too. And if you think about it, what I think is also happening here is the creator and producers are trying to have the audience experience the same confusion that David is experiencing. So if you think about these different astral plane projections, memories, etc., they're all based to create the same experience and confusion that David is experiencing. At least that's what I experienced, and I think that's
I totally agree with you, and I got that even at the end of the first episode. Even knowing what this is about, I said, oh, well, see, he's not crazy, but then again, everything that is happening to him right now is completely crazy and could be dismissed as a delusion.
Very much so. It was incredible. It was incredible. Starting from the first episode, yes.
I don't know what crazy man at Fox greenlit this production, because it's not the kind of thing you can walk into a room full of executives and say, hey, I want to write a story about a schizophrenic, and we spend half the time swimming in his delusions, and we never know what's really going on.
Right, and then they basically let you find out as the character finds out. So it makes me, just not to really jump too far ahead here, but when you think of his rational brain or his rational mind, the character like a self-defense, like let me explain you things, and it goes into the facts, we find out as David finds out. And I think that's incredible how we start learning the backstory as we start having these questions that are explained to us in a completely different manner than we're used to them being explained.
There is no other show I can think of that trusts its audience this much to hang in there and wait for the answers and experience things along with the character. And it's okay if you don't even start to understand things thoroughly until almost the end. We trust you to stick around because it's so well written. Yep. The visuals are so enticing and involving. It's shot in a way I've never seen a television show shot before.
Completely surreal. It's also a comic show shot in a way that it's never been shot before. You're usually put into some kind of element of images captured on a comic page, almost like where it walks you through things in a manner where you would relate to a comic book movie. This is nothing like that. I've never seen anything like it.
It's an interpretation of a comic book, which is usually something super easy to storyboard because it's storyboarded already in the comic book, right? That's how they did The Watchmen. They practically a shot for shot.
Right.
But this, I can't even imagine how they storyboarded this. It really is. It branches off in so many directions and has so many weird imagery.
So I have another useless piece of information here that we can put to use. David Haller's character, I think his name was like Dan Stevens or something. The actor, he was not given any information other than study psychiatric wards, patients, etc., study schizophrenia. He was not given very much of the backstory of his character, the writing, the script. He was meant to be confused along the way, just like the audience was. And if you think about it, it wasn't until episode 6 or so that he actually understood the Shadow King.
Right.
And it probably is time to start going into breaking down the Shadow King and the factors, because this show is ultimately, essentially, a deconstruction of the villain, if you think about it.
It's true. You're absolutely right. All right, so let's begin with a character breakdown. As the resident expert, why don't you explain to us who these people are and what's going on with them?
Oh my gosh, where do you even start with a character breakdown? First of all, I mean, if the most essential character here in my mind is not even David Haller, it's the character of Amal Farouk, however you say it, that is the Shadow King.
Yeah.
This character and the Lenny, the dog named King, these other mental projections, whether it's male or female at different points, the script writing for all these various pieces of the Shadow King, I think, is one of those things that would be almost impossible to explain in a very short period of time. But
I'll tell you what, I was fooled right along with the main character at the beginning. I thought this female character, I thought she was going to be his conscience and, helping him out throughout the show, and it turned out she was his arch-villain.
Yeah, completely, and she actually started as his mental patient friend.
Right.
In the real life, in the reality, she was actually his friend, and then because of the switch of between Sid and David, Sid actually killed her into the wall.
Yeah.
And then the next time you see her, she's actually his imaginary friend saying, "You killed me," and that's the first time that he is seeing her speak to him after her death, when really there's this other Lenny character that's a male version that other people saw. So it's it completely confused me for quite some time.
It reminded me at first of An American Werewolf in London, where the people he's killed come back and are kind of trying to guilt him into doing the right thing.
Oh, yes.
But it turned out not to be that at all.
Right,
it was something completely different. This entity that lives inside of him is adopting imagery that it finds it can hide behind and use to manipulate him.
Right, and there's also a little piece of interesting information there too, that Aubrey Plaza, who by the way plays this character, this villain incredibly, she should get nominated for everything you can get nominated for.
Right.
She when she was testing for the show and taking on potential parts, the creator thought, I would actually like you to play Lenny's character. It was written for a man. Mm-hmm. And if you look and you actually pay attention to the writing in this, there are things said to her that are said like she's supposed to be a man. And if you look at how she dresses, when she is portraying Lenny, she's actually dressing more masculine. She doesn't have makeup on. She speaks like a man.
But it completely works.
And then she plays the other character as well, and it's just unbelievable. So I don't even know where you begin truly breaking down the Shadow King, because we saw from the show that it starts with Professor X turning her into losing her physical form, and then going into the mind of David, thus becoming some form of parasite that gets stronger off of his mind over time.
This is the aftermath of an entirely different adventure, an epic power battle between good and evil. And this is what happens after. It's almost like the Silmarillion to the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
This is the Lord of the Rings, but there was a whole Silmarillion, an ancient tale of battle between Professor X and a force of evil, this Shadow King, that happened before the story could even begin.
Right, and if you notice, I don't know if you caught this, but just to jump into something here, bringing up Professor X, if you look and you remember the wheel that shows up in just a flash of an episode, you can see the wheel of Professor X, and it basically insinuates, of course, that he's in a wheelchair when he's handing off the child.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, if you remember the imagery in the classroom setting when they were showing him actually defeating Shadow King, he was standing up.
Yeah.
So that tells me that in between the time that he beat the Shadow King and the time that he's dropping off the kid, that somehow he ends up in a wheelchair. And we remember that during the Nixon time period of the apocalypse, he was placed into a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So
now, could it also be that he just doesn't know or doesn't remember that he was supposed to be in a wheelchair? And that he simply imagines, like most people would be standing up?
That's a great point.
You never know with this show. It constantly plays with your perceptions and your assumptions. Any assumption you make could be wrong at any time.
That's so true. I don't understand, but it's those pieces of the show are what aren't explained and what might frustrate some people. And I didn't actually get frustrated by it, but I could see how the lack of explanation and the way they present information could be a frustration.
It's something that worries me, because when my wife saw this, her reaction was basically, "What the hell did I just watch?" And she really didn't get into it after that. But I was like, "What the hell did I just watch? I've got to see more."
It's incredible, exactly. Right. And so on the point of the fact that they want the viewer to experience what David's character has experienced, he's essentially an unreliable narrator on purpose.
Mm. Now, he's rescued at the end of the first episode by a team of, let's call them superheroes. They're really resistance fighters, I guess.
Right.
But what do you think of these people? Because I thought they were fascinating, and I'm not still entirely clear what each of them can do.
Right, and I think I'm somewhat clear. So let's start with let's start with the doctors. So we have Dr. Bird, and she is somewhat of I want to call her the mother of the group, if you will. And she is Dr. Bird and Oliver Bird are kind of the founders of Summerland with whatever the Dr. Carey with his Carey 2 character. So I believe they were the founders of Summerland, and they have their little team, and one of them is also, I want to say, Patanomy, and I think his character basically can go into the mind, can control memory and access memory, can take someone into memories, can change memories.
I really liked him because he was very practical in his approach to everything.
Right.
It's like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this our objective? We should be doing something else instead. Very practical guy.
Right. Very much. And so our two doctors, starting with Dr. I want to say her name Melanie Bird or something like that. She's telepathy, telekinesis, so everything she can do is mind. I don't think she can move objects.
See, I don't remember
She
her
hasn't moved
doing
she,
anything.
She was inside of. She was speaking to David in his mind. So
Yeah.
we do know that she could do that. So she did. She was asking him questions. She asked. Remember, they had their little conversation about him seeing Oliver and that experience. So
I was never entirely sure if that was her using her telepathy to talk to him, or him using his telepathy to talk to her silently.
oh no, she can do that.
Okay.
That I am clear of.
Who cooked everyone? Somebody has fire powers. When he was rescued, half a dozen agents got cooked. One of them got half of his face burned off. Who did that? How did it work?
That is I was wondering the same thing, and you saw before as he was going underwater, slowly slipping under the water, that the actual air started having a little bit of fire in it as well. And the only thing I can think of is that because Sid, who we haven't really touched on yet, I want to say her name's Sydney Barrett. She goes by Sid, who's played by awesome actress Rachel Keller, who's also from Fargo, along with Gene Smart's Dr. Bird character. So Sid is hinting at bragging about how she saved him multiple times, and I'm thinking, how is the person with the power that only allows you to go into someone's mind, or vice versa, into someone else's with touch, how is she the one that's doing all this saving? So I'm trying to think that maybe she touched someone who had this power.
But then she'd be in them, right?
Right, for a little bit of time.
And then there would be someone else running around. I don't
Because
remember.
nobody else had a power that would lead to that.
See, all this time I've been suspecting that Dr. Bird had the flame power because I hadn't seen her do anything else.
No, her only powers that I saw and that I know of from just any type of research is that she has some simple telekinesis type telepathy.
Of course, for all I know, someone threw a bunch of napalm grenades in there, and all the sparks he saw before he went underwater was just his mind warning him of what was going to happen.
Very true. But the fact that it looked like napalm, they're fried bodies.
Yeah, I mean, they were cooked through and through when they fell into the water. They were black skeletons.
That piece is still confusing, and it didn't really get explained.
But that's going to be a hallmark of this show. If you are bothered by things not being completely explained, well, maybe you should take a pause. But if you're intrigued by things not being completely explained and are willing to see them explained in the future, definitely tune in. If you can hold on to that anticipation, this is the show for you. What did you think about his girlfriend?
I thought that it was great that they could create the dynamic of having a relationship, a romantic relationship, without touching each other.
It's basically Rogue, but with a different power set.
Yes.
Whereas Rogue leeches the powers out of other people, she simply enters their consciousness and swaps with them.
Right.
But it's a perfectly valid excuse to not want to touch anybody.
Very much so.
And it's funny because I was thinking in the second episode, with this guy's powers, he could totally touch her in a virtual experience in his mind. And then immediately afterwards, he figures out he could do this, and they start having a pseudo-physical relationship.
So I really thought it was interesting how basically Sid and David are madly in love but can't touch each other, and how that can play out over the course of this season, and have our two main characters essentially be in love and not have to deal with these two characters playing with the fact that maybe they're going to go there, maybe they're not throughout it. We actually get to have them be in love and not have to deal with that. And the fact that they couldn't touch each other until David's able to figure out how to find her in a mental space, I thought that was just really cool.
That was cool. And then when they finally did get together, there was no pussyfooting around,
yeah.
so to speak.
Oh yeah, and then with it being a late night FX show, it's just cool that they're able to bring some kind of reality to it, because with that much built up time that they're gonna get to business.
Now, you had mentioned before that these people who have this mental connection to David eventually become vulnerable to the villain.
They do, and basically they all become vulnerable pretty much right around the same time as they go back to David's house and visit him where he is at the house, and they get pretty much caught up in this mental projection fear factor, and where he has to freeze time with the bullets being fired.
Yeah. It reminded me. Well, they said it in the show, but it reminded me of internet carried computer virus because David's connected to everyone mentally, anyone he wants to be, and especially the people that rescued him have entered his mind, and by having that connection with him, and especially entering the little realm space that he's occupied, they become vulnerable to the villain, who then has access to all of them.
Right, because they're basically he's in every one of their heads in order for them to be in his head. And because of that, the parasite is now attached to their minds as well. So you see how we saw this when they immediately just pop right into the clockwork psychiatric ward, or they think that they're at least there, when really they're trapped in just a mental program, if you will.
Right.
And they're all just stuck there, and you see Dr. Bird fake feeding, or feeding her husband who's been gone for 20 years. You see Carrie 1, Carrie 2, playing checkers and just being super close to each other. It's just interesting. They put them into a real life. They think that they're real people stuck in a psych ward.
And it just shows you, if they were confused so easily into misbelieving their lives, imagine what it was like for this poor bastard, for his whole life since infancy.
Yeah, and I like that they let us experience that throughout the show. And you could see it wasn't until, roughly episode 6 that he starts realizing, oh my God, this Lenny individual is this monster, is this Shadow King, is this person that's haunting me, and she's too powerful for me. And that so when they're in their safe space with Sid,
right.
Now this Sid is seeing this Shadow King impacting her, because Shadow King was already in Sid's mind earlier, because when David and Sid switched, that was the Shadow King's first access to Sid's mind.
Yeah, and everybody he gets connected to is subject to being harassed by this same demon, this mind demon.
And I think it's interesting how Oliver and our Carrie scientist, our Dr. Carrie scientist, team up to help David fight the Shadow King.
Speaking of Carries, I wanted to say that I feel like the Carrie, the female Carrie and the male Carrie, have an inverse relationship to the one that David and the Shadow King have.
Yes.
Because you have the parasite feeding on David, but then their relationship is a beneficial one where one is protecting the other. And so where one's trying to destroy the other on one side, here we see the opposite of that. Two people join together to help each other.
Right, and you can see they're completely impacted and affected by each other. They gave in one of their probably Pink Floyd songs, because they like to the creator likes to focus on the Pink Floyd soundtrack, which by the way is a pretty much psychoanalysis of crazy people, the entire Dark Side of the Moon album.
Right.
Hence its connection to the show. But if you look at what's happening there, they basically wanted to focus on when you see Carrie fighting the let's just call them the bad guys, tactical troops, and in real life, when you see them fighting that, he's making the motions with her in a completely different setting. So I thought that they didn't really go into how that could happen, because you don't know how they're connected mentally for that to happen, but they're basically two bodies working as one.
It felt like a Corsican twins. I don't know if you get that reference, but there was this Italian twin pair who could feel each other's pain.
Right, so then when she's shot, he falls, he takes an immediate fall down, but he doesn't actually have the bullet, he doesn't feel it, and he's not dying. And I thought it was interesting how they explained that they couldn't connect as one without her being awake, because it would be too much of a shock to her system, that he needed to absorb her with her conscious.
Right, I guess it would be, maybe it was a rape analogy, like you couldn't meld without their being aware of it, or else it would cause damage to them. And then when they finally did get together, he was able to assimilate some of her damage, and kind of, I guess it was a compromised damage level between the two of them.
Right, so it basically now is taken on, the damage is now absorbed by two bodies instead of one, if you will.
Right.
And so that helped the healing process.
Now, the show ended with 2 different cliffhangers, which was very unusual to me. They threw in that post-credits sequence, which created an additional cliffhanger in addition to the cliffhanger they intended for the main story to have, because poor Dr. Bird's husband is now infected at the end of the story, and he's driving off with his own hallucinations.
Right, that the Shadow King makes its way to Oliver. I thought it was interesting how he just leaves super happy, just walks out, gets in the car, and has going to scheme something, but that's why you see her, because that's the mental projection that he has of her as his imaginary friend. I just thought it was interesting that it was the same person, the same mental projection.
So now they're driving off. Presumably his priorities have been reset by the leech that's in his mind, Shadow King.
Right.
Which is why he was willing to leave in the middle of everything.
Right.
Maybe he's not even aware that everything happened anymore, because the Shadow Kings regularly mess with David's memories. Presumably it's going to mess with Oliver's memories,
yes,
which weren't too good to begin with, because he could barely remember his wife.
But it has been said by Dr. Bird, his wife, that he at one point was just as strong as David.
Yeah, she said he was just like you. So I guess he's going to have the same power set.
Right, and we don't know if anybody's after him, if anybody's tracking him, and what's happening with that. We were left with just the unknown of this potential new megavillain now being in someone just as strong as David.
Right. Now I thought, okay, they've set up the next season. Now we're fine. We know what we're expecting. No, because after the credits, something else happens.
I don't even know what you want to call this. It kind of looked like some bizarro evil villain top of BB-8, like the head top of BB-8. It looked like kind of like some with a weird little eye thing that's like scanning him, and you hear David actually say, "Oh, is this one of Carrie's other devices?"
Right.
And it looks like this harmless little device. And you see, all of a sudden, what happens?
He gets sucked inside. He's miniaturized and put in this little bubble drone.
Right, and he doesn't have a mind he can do anything with. He can't probably impact the walls and the shape of things to move things. He's just stuck in it.
Now, he has teleported in the past. So I suspect once he gets a hold of his shock, he'll be able to do something. But I'm not sure what this device is. Is it D3? They said something about Equinox, deploy Equinox or something.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
And where would they be taking him? Because they need him to get to Shadow King. They know he is good.
Right.
So this is the start of my opinion, of knowing that a super mutant is good and using that to help one that is not good. So he would have to be used for the purposes of getting the Shadow King.
The timing of the abduction is suspicious, because we felt like they had just come to an accord and decided to work together, and then he gets abducted. So maybe it's not D3. Maybe
it's Professor X.
Yeah, or something else that we don't know. Or somebody was joking online, it's the Mojoverse capturing him for the games.
But the fact that he just basically just slowly floats away, and his Sid goes inside and is freaking out, and we're just left with that. And the fact that the Shadow King is off with Oliver waxing poetic about some kind of beat poetry with snaps of the finger.
Right.
You know, we're completely left with an amazing double cliffhanger.
Yes. I don't think they could have ended it in a more satisfying way, where I was really looking forward to the next season, but also felt really good about what had been explained about the season we just watched.
Right. And the only thing that I've been able to find on reading about what the creator wants to do with Season 2 is that he wants to do a similar thing that he did with Season 1, and he doesn't know how long the show is going to go. He doesn't know how X-Men's going to be brought into it, but he made it sound like he's excited about Season 2 and the future of the show.
Well, so am I, because based on what I've seen so far, these people really know how to write a good narrative.
Yeah, and we're left without so much information where we're forced to compare it to the real comics. We're left with the right amount of information where it can become its own new thing.
Yes.
And it's exciting.
They completely absorb the spirit of the comics without having to copy anything exactly from the comics, and I really like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, on that note, I'm going to sign off. Thank you, Cosmo, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to Jesse James Comics for letting us use their venue for this. See you all next time.
Bye-bye.
But you'll look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two. easy. Give me your answer, do. I'm half crazy, all for the love